الالعاب، تطوير الالعاب. الشرق الاوسط اعتقد الفتره الاخيره كان واضح جدا اهتمام شرائح المجتمع بالالعاب بشكل عام. مطورين كثير بدأوا يشتغلون عندنا في السعوديه وفي الشرق الاوسط. شركات عالميه مثل يوبي سوفت بدات تهتم في مساله تعريب الالعاب والدبلجه، ارتست، العاب شركات ضخمه جدا عالميه تشتغل بالمليارات، بدأوا يهتمون بالسوق السعودي والسوق في الشرق الاوسط والعالم العربي بشكل عام. راح يكون معنا الكسندر البعضة، هي من بلارينجو في التسويق والاستحواذ في شمال افريقيا والشرق الاوسط. هي راح تكون مديرة الجلسة. الكسندر.
Hello, afternoon everyone. So apologies, this panel is going to be in English because I don't speak Arabic, but I'm sure you all speak English. I'd like to welcome my panelists here. On my left is Yánيk from Ubisoft based in Abu Dhabi. We have Ahmed from Semaphore based here, and of course Abdullah needs no introduction. He is the gaming guru of the region. I'm sure you all know him. So a couple of people couldn't be with us today, Ziad and Mahmoud from Quercat, but we are thinking of them. So without further ado, I'll press on. Let's just start with a very quick introduction about exactly what your companies do, and then we'll go into some more details. So Yánيk, please tell us what's Ubisoft's remit in Abu Dhabi.
Okay, hi everybody. Very happy to be here. It's the first time for me to come to the country. Ubisoft, as you may know, is a developer and publisher of video games, number 3 worldwide. And we opened a studio in Abu Dhabi early 2012. The mission of the studio here is to develop games, global games, I have to say that, because we are providing content for Ubisoft. And we came to the region because we knew that there are some readily resources available, and our mission is to develop and to create jobs for the Arab people in Abu Dhabi. I mean, the goal is to be 100 people in 3 to 5 years. That's what we do, and we are going to release our first game the first quarter of next year.
Okay, thank you.
Is it on? Okay. So my name is Ahmed. I'm the Director of Development at Semaphore, and Semaphore is the games and media subsidiary of Semaphore International, which existed since 1999 and works in the e-learning and training sector. Semaphore focuses on developing video games and multimedia experiences that can complement the educational part of the Semaphore business. And our first flagship product is called Unearthed Trail of Ibn Battuta, or the Arabic name Al-Rikaz fi Athar Ibn Battuta. And we've released it this May on PlayStation 3 and many other platforms. And today we're releasing the golden edition of the game, which will include many additional enhancements and fixes. So that's the general idea about the business.
I'm Abdullah Hamid. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm Abdullah Hamid. I was described once as a video game development activist. I founded Game Taco, which is a non-profit game development community. We have over 800 developers from around the Arabic world. We do competitions, we help them find publishers, we help them find funding, we help them find other people who are interested in the same thing. Just a community of game developers. I also work for Lamba, which is a game development studio in San Francisco that aims to develop local Khaliji experiences in specific. Our first game is Desert Tycoon, it's out there, Sultan al-Sahra. And I continue to be just an activist, I guess, around game development in the Arabic world.
Okay, thanks very much. So we don't need to go into details about how big gaming is in the region. We know it's very big. Obviously, Ubisoft is convinced of the size of the market. And I think if we start with Abdullah, since you have quite a nice overview and hopefully a little bit unbiased, what, in your view, has been the biggest shift in the last year, be that console versus mobile, be it development here versus importing, you know, what for you were the main trends in this region?
Okay. For a while, for the last 2 years, I should say, not last 2 years, but the 2 years before the last, everybody was, in the console market, was kind of depressed a bit. Development costs were too high for games, innovation was running slow, and there was a big scare that console was not gonna go on the way it is. But that changed in the last year with PlayStation 4 as well as Xbox One, as well as the Vita and Wii U as well as the 3DS. Sales have been strong until now. We saw a strong launch a couple of weeks ago, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So that market is fine. It's not going anywhere. The thing is that a new market opened up and just boomed and exploded, which is the mobile market. Especially in the Khalij or the GCC, is that mobile penetration, as we all know, is huge. It reached to 200% in some areas. But the one thing that is still a hurdle is payments. People are still finding a lot of a hard time paying for their digital content in general. Online, there is still no integration with the carrier billing with Google or iOS. Banks are still running really slow in helping customers adopt credit cards. Until now, we don't see McDonald's even having a way to pay for burgers using credit cards. If McDonald's is not offering them, how can they expect people to actually pay for digital content using credit cards? So that is still an issue, but we are finding success with Numba. We're having healthy numbers. As I read a couple of days ago in Polygon, Yánيk was featured in that article. They're also doing really well with their Smurfs game. So numbers are becoming to be healthy, and Ubisoft being in the region just proves to us that, yeah, our predictions are in sync, and well, there is a bright future for this.
Okay, interesting. Ahmed, everyone has a mobile phone, or maybe two. You released your game on PlayStation as well as iOS and further platforms to come. Why not just focus on the mobile market?
Well, the kind of game that we're developing, when you're looking at the types of experiences that are available on mobile, they tend to be more casual and more kind of shorter session times, something that's instant to download and try. And our kind of experience is more story-driven. So we wanted to tell a story based on the cultures and the values of the region and the history of this particular region in the world, and present it in a way that will be described as the non-Disney version of Aladdin, for example. And so, in order to do that, we needed something, a device that is more powerful. So we started with PC and PlayStation 3, and then at a certain point in development, we decided that we want to bring this experience to the mobile market in order to differentiate ourselves from the other casual experiences that are available. And so we started downscaling the game in such a way that it's still the same game, but with lower texture resolutions, less image effects and filters in order to fit into mobiles. And today now we're able to deliver that on mobile, and we're taking that to other projects as well. And so that's the main catalyst behind the move.
Okay. Yánيk, you've had some years of experience with Ubisoft, I think moving into the Facebook games and the mobile market. Is the strategy to port all of the existing video games over, like Assassin's Creed, Prince of Persia, all of that, or will you be coming up with new stuff specifically for mobile?
I will say it will be mixed. A couple of days ago, Ubisoft announced Assassin's Creed Pirates on mobile. It will be another games based on the franchise, and of course, I mean, Ubisoft's strategy, global strategy again, is always to create brands. You will never see a lot of advertisement about Ubisoft as the company, because our CEO Yves believes that the people will have very good experience playing our games, and by having this experience, they will be able to. We are able to leverage the different platforms. And I will say we will differentiate. We'll still have the core business with console, but utilizing the new platform, the new business like mobile, tablet, to develop game based on our franchise, and as well as to developing new brands for the tablets and mobiles.
Okay.
Yes.
I attended a couple of events in Dubai around gaming, and one thing that came up was sort of distribution. So people are perhaps developing the games, but they're not really finding good distribution channels in this region compared to elsewhere. I want to know from the panelists is that how you're solving this problem. Obviously, you both have all have very different experiences, and more importantly, with the rise of the mobile gaming, have the distribution channels changed, and who, is it the app stores more? Are you talking to telcos? What does that model look like for you? Do you want to start?
Yes, but for us, we are experiencing that in Abu Dhabi because our game is going to be released in a couple of months. Then we'll be able to give you feedback. Still mid next year.
Okay.
But what is good working for Ubisoft is that it's a global company, and we have global contract with many different companies. And if we see that we have some problems here, we have some people in Paris that will be able to help us because we have that network, that publisher network in Ubisoft will help us to be strong and to push our product in the market.
Okay, but are you, for example, pre-installing your games on devices?
But that could be an option. Depend on the strategy that we are going to take. Are we going to be exclusive in one platform? Are we going to spread the game in different platforms? It's a strategy that the company will need to take.
Okay.
But I think like Ubisoft does on console, mainly our games are spread in different platforms. We have few exclusivities in our catalog.
Okay. Ahmed, there's a massive push for Android devices in the region, and I think next year it's going to be interesting to see LG try and take market share away from Samsung and potentially some of the lower-end devices. Is this something you're considering, pre-installing games on devices? Have you talked to any of the manufacturers or not yet?
Can you ask me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, currently we're working with both Apple and Qualcomm towards something like this. With Qualcomm, we're currently working on bundling deals with a lot of because Qualcomm manufactures the Snapdragon processor, which is available in most handsets that are Android-based in the market. And so we're currently working with the OEMs through Qualcomm in order to bundle the game with those devices. And obviously, it's a very big market, and so it's very fractured. So you have all the way, things from the very low-end Android devices to the high-end ones, and the game is developed on Android to be scalable. And so we're able to, to deploy the game on all these devices, and then we'll have a better idea of where it could perform better. It helps that the game is available in 21 languages for menus and subtitles, so even their Eastern Asian markets can easily, pick up the game and start, working on it right away.
Okay. Abdullah, payments, distribution, telcos. Tell me something about that. What's your view?
I'm the worst person to talk about telcos. I usually try to cut telcos out of the equation as much as possible. They have no stake in actually having content be sold to them. Usually to them, they see a user, a telecom user as, a number of some sort. This person will pay 300 riyals a month. If he paid it on content, half of it on content that he's not going to pay, then we're going to give a cut to the content developer. But if he paid it on data and he paid it on phones and SMS, then we'll get the bigger chunk. So to them, it's really, they don't want content developers to actually develop content for them. They're trying to delay that as much as possible and try to have the upper hand as long as possible. So I try to cut them out as much as I can. Of course, there's no avoiding working with them, but I don't calculate revenues that I'm going to get from them. I don't depend on them for marketing or anything like that. Anything that comes from them is just extra.
Okay. Not a happy chappy there. I don't know if there are any telcos in the audience.
Yeah, telcos. Abdullah Hamid is your friend.
Okay. So let's get into a little bit more pointed questions. Ahmed, I read some critics' reviews of the game, which were not very positive. However, that could totally be not an issue? What are the financials like? Are you getting the downloads? Are you making money? Has it been a worthwhile investment for you, irrespective of what the critics say?
Yeah, I just drove in with my Porsche, so that tells you a part of the picture. No, but the idea is that with Unearthed, we wanted the project to be our ongoing R&D effort. So everything that we learned from the project, we're applying to other smaller and non-gaming related projects as well. And so with Unearthed Episode 1, we got over 60 reviews. The current average is around 5.5 in terms of scores out of 10. And actually, most of the higher ones are coming from the Western media. Most of them were citing numerous issues, some issues that are specific to the PlayStation 3 version of the game. And so since we launched in May, we've gathered all these reviews and we collected all the feedback from the users and from the critics. That came to a list of over 120 small fixes. So we started fixing them and we just finished this week. And so we're pushing the new update that will address all of these issues that were raised. And so it's interesting to see now how the market will react to the new golden edition of the game. And in tandem with that, we're also working on episode 2 of Unearthed, which is set for next generation consoles. And so it's currently it's going to be on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and we're pushing the high end this time with it, so that we don't have to worry about being limited by the tech. So it's still too early to call anything at this point, but the markets are responding well, and from our continuous discussions with the media and with the players, what they like to see, we started to shape a general idea of where we should be heading with the game and other projects as well.
Great, that's very encouraging. I think, it's something that we perhaps don't do a lot here. We do something, we make a big mistake or lots of little things that are tweaked, we're ready for the feedback and then we go back in.
Sure.
So,
I mean, one thing we always try to tell people, it's in entrepreneurship in general, not just in game development, but you cannot in general compare the very first car that was developed in Malaysia to the latest Mercedes that is coming from Germany. That doesn't mean that Malaysia should stop producing cars. It means that we should learn from their mistakes, like we should learn from our mistakes if there are any, and just continue pushing the envelope. We are currently a licensed PlayStation 4 developer, even prior to the launch of PlayStation 4, which is the first in the region. So that's something that you would never hear about anything like that about 20 years ago. So we're starting to see all these emerging trends, and we just recently became licensed for Nintendo Wii. And one of the main criteria for Nintendo is that you have to have released at least a single game on a prior console in order to become a Wii U developer. And so this helped us. So now, if we are late to the last console cycle, now we have the opportunity to start strong in this new one. We're 30 years late in general to game development. But if we don't start acting now, we'll never make it.
okay, thank you. Yannick, localization or not localization, there's a lot of people that tell me, we don't need to have it in a specific language. People are quite happy playing games from Candy Crush to Assassin's Creed to GTA. They've been doing it for ages. What is the upside in localization? And if you could give the audience a little bit of background about your recent Smurf in Arabic.
Okay, what I should have said at the beginning, because I said we are developing product for Ubisoft content. I have another team in Abu Dhabi who is looking at the market, and we are trying to learn as well in our side the market and to learn what the player likes here. Then we are looking at localization as well. We always speak about culturalization. I have difficulties to pronounce this word. Culturalization of the content. It's not only localization. As I said in a Polygon article, we read left to right. Here people are reading right to left. The user interface is important. We try to learn and understand what we should do to address our games, maybe Ubisoft franchise games, to the local people. Because I think engagement is very important, and you can hear that word everywhere now in the media, in the digitalization. We need to engage people, and we believe that if you can speak to the players in their native language, they will be much more interested maybe to be engaged and to be immersed into our game. That's our vision. That's what we have done with Smurf. It was a test. We pitched Ubisoft. We say we should try, because that brand is universal. Everybody knows Smurf. You can see Smurf everywhere in different products. Then we localize it with our team in Abu Dhabi. We put it in the market. Now, we have 1.7 million players of Smurf playing in Arabic. And for us, it gives us an indication that if you localize, you're closer to the consumer. It's a basic rules, but
this is a game that's playable on which platform?
it's Facebook.
Okay, and so you
Yes.
did you do advertising on Facebook to get those users?
We did not have a lot of budget
Okay.
because Ubisoft said, okay, it's a new market, try it. And we just put on the market. We had some, we have a customer relationship manager forums that we try to organize events, and we try to communicate with the people through the forum. It was our main actions. And after we push, I mean, we have our colleagues in Casablanca who localized Rayman on PS Vita in Arabic, and we localized as well Prince of Persia on mobile. And I mean, step by step, we learn better, and I think we are going to have more product in Arabic. Yes.
Congratulations. Abdullah, tell us a bit about how games and movies tend to work together. So I think they play off each other. Sometimes people will develop a game off the back of a movie to get some exposure. Is that something that's happening here? Should it happen here? Can people work better together with that?
Could you repeat that because the sound was...
Oh, okay. Okay. So games and movies have a lot of overlap. I see a lot elsewhere that either a game will be released just after a movie or to help promote the movie. They do this quite well with, I think Disney Avengers did it, perhaps Batman a while ago. Is that happening as much as it could do here? Do you think that it's a way that perhaps brands, advertisers, games and movies can work together to build a different bit of an ecosystem, shall we say?
I think it's pretty much, well, what you're asking is that are we creating interesting intellectual property that we'll be able to use in video as well as in
Well, also in terms of acquiring users, right? So for example, I mentioned to Ahmed that I was actually in the Ibn Battuta Mall when I saw a trailer for the game. So obviously that's very contextual. I might be seeing the latest Smurfs movie and then they would be called to action to play the game on Facebook, right? I haven't seen that yet, but that's kind of what I'm saying in terms of acquiring the users.
Exactly. That's until now, like it's really hard to think that movies and games in Saudi Arabia specifically kind of go hand in hand because there is no public venue to actually watch movies or anything like that. So doing the same marketing campaign that Sima 4 did wouldn't really work in Saudi Arabia, but it probably worked really well in UAE. It was really hard listening to you talking because you're so far away and I think the speakers are not working. But what I think is that we're still in the process in Saudi Arabia to develop intellectual property that we can use both in videos as well as in games, and these will feed off of each other pretty much. If we create an intellectual property that's similar to the Smurfs, for example, okay, we can create movies, we can create shows, we can create YouTube channels dedicated to that intellectual property, and then we can also create games and create other mediums. It doesn't have to be games and movies. It can be something in the future that we didn't even experience yet. And we're still in the process right now in developing this. We've seen this on YouTube, and I think what's next is games. We've seen a lot of the guys from U-Turn, we've seen the guys from C3, we've seen the guys from Lumnik who do Masamir animations be very successful on the YouTube media. But we're still not seeing that with games yet. We saw Ahmed is developing his own IP, which is Unearthed, which is great. I want to see what's going to happen in the next episodes, and I'm also interested to see how will that affect YouTube channels. Are there any plans to do animations or stories?
In general, just to address the specific point that you were asking about, the fact that there are games based on movies. Usually games that are based on a movie do not perform well because they have a very small production time. You're tied to the release of the movie itself, and if it's not immediately in the minds of those who are watching it, then it loses some of its value. And so in general in the industry as a whole, it's generally banned with the exception of some very minor success stories. In our case, we are currently in talks with the broadcasters about how to turn Unearthed into more of an IP and something that will transcend media. And so just in addition to the game itself, there are going to be other exploitations of media in the future. The exact details we're going to be delving into next year, hopefully. But for now, I mean, there is interest in it. One critical aspect is the fact that it plays on culture. One of the characters that we have in the game is a girl named Dania. And Dania is an archaeologist. And with Dania, we tried to provide a modern-day example of a Muslim, young Arab female who is the non-typical portrayal of female stereotypes in video games. And so that got a lot of reactions worldwide, be it from the Middle East or from the West. And from the West, it's a lot of people were comparing this, those Saudis are trying to kind of enforce their culture and trying to invade the world slowly through such means. And the immediate reaction that we got from Muslims in the Arab world is that this is something that's unusual in games. And instead of being in an Arabic country where it's about to be, nuked or bombed, you're suddenly in a different kind of Middle East where people are not just shooting at you. You're actually experiencing a puzzle across the whole Middle East and in modern day. So it gives a kind of a fresh look at the region. So that's what we're trying to portray in the IP in general.
Great.
Just want to jump in to give an example. A great example is from Ubisoft. Because again, it took 25 years for Ubisoft to create brands. I mean, everything is about IP in Ubisoft. And Ubisoft announced last year that we are going to release a movie on Assassin's Creed and Ghost Recon as well. That's one of the strategy of the company to diversify.
Games company moving into movies.
Yes. And again, I think we can speak about convergence of the media. I mean, it's everything about that. Of course, the brand has to be strong as well if you want to move into cinema. But that's an example that Ubisoft is taking as well.
Okay. My final question then to you before we open it up to the floor. Any plans for acquisitions next year? Are you going to look to acquire any regional game companies?
I'm not the right person you need to ask that, but I mean, we acquired 2 companies. I mean, in mobile, we acquired Future Games of London and Digital Chocolate in Barcelona 2 months ago, again, because we want to enter the mobile market. Ubisoft is always on the market looking at good companies. I mean, like you can see Massive, who was bought by Ubisoft a couple of years ago, who is now developing The Division. I think it was the big hit at E3 this year. And Ubisoft is always looking at the market, and if we have good opportunities, of course, we will be able to acquire.
Okay, very interesting. So just to recap then, I think the points that we got were, it's all about storytelling, creative storytelling, so this is something for perhaps the advertising and media industries to be aware of. Telcos, a little bit more work needed from you guys. There is an opportunity there. Obviously, money is being made. There are good distribution channels, but nobody's really talking to each other. Just a quick note about Power&Go. We are very proud to support the Battle of the Games, which is going on outside. We've seen some really interesting games there. And we are hoping to help publish some of the games and integrate that into our platform. So any advice from the panelists later on would be appreciated. And to finish, I think the ArabNet team have kindly done a roundup, a video of the games that were submitted to the Battle of the Games.
Thank you Alex. أنا حأحكي بالعربي. نحن هالسنة أطلقنا مبادرة جديدة بعرب نت الرياض لأول مرة بأي ملتقى أو مؤتمر لعرب نت اللي هو أو هي مبادرة حلبة الألعاب واللي بتسلط الضوء على 8 ألعاب عربية من مصر، من لبنان، من السعودية ومن غيرها. مين بيحب الألعاب بهالقاعة بس تنعرف؟ مين بيلعب ألعاب؟ فبنشجعكم انه تطلعوا تشوفوا في هلا في جلسه بعد هاي اولى الجلسه بعد الغداء شوفوا الالعاب الموجوده برا. في عندنا 8 العاب كثير مهضومه وفيكم تتعرفوا على العالم اللي برمجوا هالالعاب وخلقوا هالالعاب. ونحن شاكرين لبارنيكو لدعمهم لحلبة الألعاب لأول مرة، وهن مستعدين إنه يتعاونوا مع ويكونوا شركاء مع أي شخص مبرمج ألعاب لخلق طرق تنقيد جديدة للألعاب الرقمية. فهيدي كمقدمة للفيديو اللي حتشوفوه هلأ.
Sorry, from the audience that need to be asked. Yes, over there.
My question is. Hello. My question is regarding consoles. Is the death of consoles upon us? I know, example, Nintendo not really hitting the $1 million mark, I'm not sure the million sales mark. But will we see consoles taking up more of a space as, let's say, more of a media sharing device, or is the gaming, gaming on consoles, is that news of the 90s and early part of this millennium?
Did you hear the question?
Yeah, you're addressing the question to whom?
So just for people in the rest of the audience that may have not heard that, he asked, is the death of the consoles upon us? So panelists, what are your views?
I don't think so. Maybe we can again see a shift into for the new console be releasing released last week. It's not only about game. No, I mean the social aspect is very important. The sharing aspect as well. You can enter the game. You can see where your friends are, what kind of game they play. You can chat with them. I think it's just a shifting between the console was focused only on games. Now you add a TV, you add a chatting system. Then I mean, it's not only about games. But I think the console were before only for games. Now they're in living room, and it's not only about games. You have, I mean, the Xbox One. Now you have Skype, all that kind of stuff that you can utilize. Again, I think it's about convergence. The game will still remain. Maybe in the future we'll be able to download the games, depending of the weight of the games. But I don't see the console disappearing the living room in the short term.
Aren't consoles, or should I say, aren't mobile phones as powerful as consoles now, or we haven't reached that stage yet?
Well, in the last Game Developers Conference that I attended, there was an optimism from everybody, from the people who are doing games on mobile, people who are doing games on handheld devices like Vita and 3DS, as well as people who are doing games for PS4, PS3, and Xbox One and Xbox 360. I don't think it is shrinking or it's dying. I think it's the whole market of games in general is growing. So just because there is a lot more people playing games on mobile doesn't mean it's not growing on console too. It's a growing market in general, and each has their own fans, and each fan base is growing. So yeah, there's no indications whatsoever that consoles are dying.
The business for video games in 2013 was bigger than music, bigger than cinema again, and it's still growing. The only thing we can see for the next 5 years is the mobile game is going to double in size. It was like $12 billion this year, and the forecast is like 24 billion in 2016. That's an area where it's going to grow much faster than the consoles.
Last week, Jack Tretton, the head of Sony in the US, mentioned that, in answering this particular question, he mentioned that this is something that he hears with every single console cycle that he's been through, that this is going to be the last console cycle and everything, and then the new cool tech is going to take over. But the fact of the matter is, even with Androids and mobile devices catching up with consoles, you still cannot get that amazing Call of Duty experience while you're watching, a 60-inch screen with a 5.1 surround sound.
Experience.
Yeah, you just can't get that on a mobile device, regardless of how powerful it is. So you need that, big blockbuster cinematic experience to still be there. But at the same time,
I disagree. I saw Qualcomm demonstrate this great game being run off an Android device onto a screen with the full surround sound. I mean, obviously it does require some extra.
Have you played The Last of Us on PlayStation 3?
yeah. Well, that's the thing. But are you a console gamer traditionally?
No.
Okay, so you're comparing. Yeah, it can produce. I mean, you can connect any mobile device to a 1080p screen and just show it. And there are mobile consoles like the Ouya and the Game Stick that can do that as well. But it's not as powerful as the current gen devices. Let alone the next gen devices. And so I think there's but at the same time you need the console manufacturers to be more open and think more, I would say, Apple style. So allow people to get into this walled garden that they have, and don't enforce so much restrictions on the content and the kind of experience that they can provide, and be more like mobile in this particular regard.
Wouldn't you say then that the console ecosystem is much like the old content that we were seeing in films and music that was disrupted by Napster and other things? Do you not think perhaps mobile gaming might disrupt
PlayStation is actually disrupting right now. I mean, they opened up game development on PS4 as well as Vita for everybody. If you can get through their certification process, pretty much they have an open, they will be providing an open store that is very similar to what iTunes is providing for iOS devices. So they are disrupting from within. That's why I'm kind of a fan of PlayStation these days. I wasn't a while back, but they actually stole my heart when they actually are taking these processes, and I think they actually get it.
Okay, great, thanks. Any other questions? Okay, there, sorry, in the front row, thank you.
Actually, my question was, there is a really big difference between the experience which you have on the mobile and the experience which you have on console. You can't actually compare between them both. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I think
yes.
That's probably...
But again, maybe we can see a diversification of players, diversification of experience, depending on the device. In mobile, you can see a new segmentation of players. The people, they don't like to be called players. They say they will never tell you I'm a gamer, but they spend in 1 year much more time than the people playing on console. And the difference is the experience and the immersion. I mean, and that's true. And on mobile as well, you cannot put as much content as you want. I think the next step, the future of mobile that will be very interesting is the cloud. When you'll be able to store enough data, then the people, they will, 3D games on mobile, and with very nice render, it will change as well the experience and the immersion in mobile.
Before we go to the next question, we're actually seeing some sort of convergence also between mobile games as well as console games, and people are trying to bring the mobile game development process to the couch experience, which that's why we saw micro consoles coming out now. Ouya, GameStick, BlueStacks are working on one, and people are saying that either Google or Apple is actually working on something similar. So we are seeing some sort of convergence between both, and I think at the end the consumer and the gamer will be the winner at the end. I mean, there will be a place for all of us to play the games that we love.
Yeah.
There are a lot of talk about the second screen experience at home, and that's what you said. Yes.
Coming from media agency.
Sorry, can you speak a bit louder?
Coming from a media agency, I'd like to ask about the in-game advertising and how you see it growing in the region. It's that question specifically to Yannick and of course the guys who have any kind of experience with that.
Okay, I think let's frame the question actually in terms of revenues from in-game advertising versus normal in-app purchases. I believe the latter is probably more profitable. And secondly, how do brands then participate in the game in a useful way to users? How can they get involved and not make it so advertising spammy?
I think we had a very nice presentation this morning about that. I don't know if you attended, but it was very interesting to see what that company is doing. I've read before coming to the panel that the freemium model, speaking on mobile, it's taking over the market, and $2 up to $3, it's spent in microtransaction, and $1 it's in ad. That's more or less the ratio, and I think that's the trend in the future. I mean, we are working on that now. It's important to have ad for sure for the income, but you don't have to disrupt the consumer experience. You have to find the best way to interact with the consumer with the ad.
Okay, how are you monetizing?
In our specific case, we're just selling the game up front, so there's no in-game purchasing. You can download the game, try the trial version, which is the first level of the game, and if you like it, you can unlock the full game at that specific point. However, regarding in-game advertisements, I think one of the most effective examples that I've seen was actually in the game Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, where at one of the levels I was playing the super MI6 agent, sorry, not MI6, the super American agency agent, and you're climbing a building, and on the building there's that big billboard of Kool-Aid, and they're putting it in such a way that it feels natural. It didn't feel like they were paid to put that specific ad, but it worked quite well. And so there are opportunities for that when it's not just in-your-face advertisements all the time. There's obviously the traditional route of just displaying ads all the time while you're playing the game. But people, from our experience, tend to kind of try to avoid this kind of things. And the very first unlock will be to actually remove those ads, if they can.
You know what, this is interesting because the advertising industry has just got their head around, moving into digital here in terms of advertising. And as soon as they're kind of accepting it now, we're telling them, okay, scrap the banner ads. Let's look at more sort of branded content within the game, that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see if they manage to keep up.
I think adding ads to your games, especially if you're targeting Arabia, doesn't really make a lot of sense. Just because we got about 30 million or 40 million people in the GCC in general, and that's not enough number of players that you can sell advertising to. I think that's not the way to approach monetization of your game. I think it's very limited. If you got that much buying power in the GCC, but that few of consumers, I think going for in-app purchases and having consumables inside your game is the ultimate way to actually make money out of this region.
Well, and ideally, I suppose, be able to take those virtual goods to a real-life merchant, perhaps, and get a discounted product or something for free, right?
Possibilities are
okay. I think maybe one last question before people die from hunger, or maybe two then. Okay, so one here next to the camera, and then the second one behind, please.
So Abdullah pointed out that...
Bit louder, please. Sorry.
So Abdullah pointed out that there hasn't been exactly a lot of ground-shaking IP that's come out of the region yet, like the Smurfs or...
Raise your voice, please.
What?
It's really hard to hear you.
Okay, all right, so you pointed out that there hasn't been a lot of really huge IP that's come out of the Middle East yet, and I'm wondering what the panel feels is conducive to having a creative environment in the region so that there is more creative content coming out of the region. And also, well, as an ancillary to that question, is it really possible to have a truly creative environment if people are always afraid of what they can say?
We saw that with YouTube, right? I think the internet enabled people to express themselves the way they want to. Artists, movie makers, game developers now. It really enabled them to be creative and not be under the restrictions that they were once under. And we've seen them discover that with themselves now and actually create amazing experiences on YouTube as well as online video in general. And I think that is just a natural progression to see that migrate into other mediums like games. I think it can, and I think restrictions create more creative people actually. And that's why Saudi Arabia is one of the leading consumers of YouTube around the world.
If I can just add to that, I think what I've noticed in Saudi compared to say the UAE or a few other areas, most people have a day job and they do a lot of stuff on the side. So all the game developers, a lot of YouTube producers, all of that. You don't actually see that so much in the UAE, for example, which you might think is more of a potential creative hotbed of activity or more incubators there. I think when people want to do something, they'll do it, irrespective of what the restrictions are. I'm just very conscious about the time. I want to take one question from this guy in the suit here, and after that, I think we'll close.
All right, I'll keep it brief. I'm actually from Zain, so I'm trying to...
Yay, a telco!
I'm trying to put the telco opinion forward. What can the telcos do to support the gaming development community? And is there such a thing as capitalizing on their customer experience knowledge to know where the customer is on location-based services or the consumer insights on how much they're spending? This is something that we can get some revenue out of gaming potentially in a partnership. So the first part of the question is, what can telecom operators do to help?
Oh, I love this question. First of all, we need plugins for all the major game engines out there to create or just create transactions by carrier billing directly inside the game without any SMS notifications or any let's say authorizations that happen through SMS and the player has to actually exit the game to do it. Payments in games are very emotional, and if you break that emotional connection with the player, that will break the experience of the game. So we need that these technical plugins as well as authentication servers, all of these payment headaches and development headaches to be taken out of our hands and be done by the telcos. We also need a revenue share that is better than 70-30 for us, 70 being for the game developers. We need something even better than that. Yes. And we need specific marketing. When I talked with most of the telcos, when I told them that I want a specific segment, I want to target women only, they said that they cannot do that. Most telcos claim that they have actually segmentation with their clients, their customers. They actually don't. I need to target these customers much more specifically. Yeah, so most telecoms that I talked to either didn't have the back end to handle transactions in the games, didn't have the front end plugins or any of the specific game development tech available. And they're under regulations from whoever not to allow payments over 40 reals per transaction, which I think is ridiculous. Game developers depend on what they call whales to make money, and whales usually pay at least $100 per transaction. So all of these things have to be available and combined and readily available to game developers for them to actually create a successful business around their games.
For the plugins, do you mean for mobile games as well?
Yes, sure.
Okay, but the problem is Apple does not allow any kind of monetization inside the game unless it goes through the App Store.
Sure.
So you need to deal with Apple first, and I know that Apple is keen on exploring this. The problem
This
is
is why Tokyo's
We have
Android.
over 60% penetration of Android in Saudi Arabia. So really, if things go the way they are, the trends that we're seeing, Android devices will be much more readily available to the people here. And they're cheaper, so I guess people will just buy more of them and more. So if we focus on Android, that's enough for us, at least at the beginning stages. Then after that, I mean, God knows what happens.
Mr. Zain, if I'm not mistaken, have you not tied up with a payments provider and you're doing some sort of hackathon this month to promote development of games that can do carrier billing? Have I read the press correctly?
You might know a little bit more than I do.
Okay.
Only yesterday, Sam, our CEO, has mentioned that we will be supporting more partnerships and more content, including games, in the future, and that's part of our future.
Okay, great. Yay. Excellent. Thank you so much for attending the gaming session. I hope it was useful for you. Please feel free to question the panelists afterwards and enjoy your lunch. Thanks.